What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now is far more important than it looks? Not because it's flashy or made of silver, but because it was born on the edge of world-changing history. A single cent, struck before America entered World War II, carrying a silent story of survival, industry, and time itself. Today, we're uncovering the true story behind the 1940 mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin many people overlook, yet collectors quietly hunt for. The 1940 mint Mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the United States during a pivotal moment in American history. When a Lincoln penny has no mint mark, it means it was struck at the main U.S. Mint facility in Philadelphia. At the time, Philadelphia pennies did not carry a mint mark, so millions of coins left the presses with nothing beneath the date. While this penny may look ordinary at first glance, its age, condition, and hidden details can turn it into something surprisingly valuable. To understand this coin, we need to step back to the year 1940. America was slowly recovering from the Great Depression. Factories were restarting, jobs were returning, and the country was watching events unfold overseas as war spread across Europe. Although the United States had not yet entered the conflict, preparation was already underway. The U.S. Mint continued producing everyday coins to support commerce, and the Lincoln penny played a crucial role in daily life. Every loaf of bread, newspaper, and bus fare depended on coins like this one. The Lincoln cent design itself had already become iconic by 1940. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, it was the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 1940, Americans had been carrying Lincoln's image in their pockets for over 3 decades. The familiar portrait on the front was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, showing Lincoln in a calm, thoughtful pose that symbolized unity and strength during difficult times. The back of the 1940 penny features the famous wheat ears design, often called the wheat penny. 2 wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent, symbolizing America's agricultural roots and self-sufficiency. This design would remain until 1958, making the 1940 penny part of a beloved era in U.S. coinage. For many collectors, wheat pennies represent a simpler, more grounded period in American history in terms of composition. The 1940 mint Mark Lincoln penny is made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This gives the coin its warm, reddish-brown color when new. During World War II, copper would soon become a critical war material, leading to major changes in penny production just a few years later. That makes the 1940 penny part of the final chapter of traditional copper cents before wartime shortages reshaped U.S. coins. At first glance, this penny may not seem rare. Over 586 million Lincoln cents were struck in Philadelphia in 1940. That's a massive number, and many of these coins circulated heavily for decades. However, rarity in coin collecting is not only about how many were made. It's about how many survived in excellent condition. Most 1940 pennies were used, scratched, worn, and eventually lost. Finding one today with sharp details, original luster, and minimal wear is far more difficult than the original mintage numbers suggest. Condition is everything when it comes to the value of this coin. A heavily worn 1940 penny might be worth just a few cents. But a well-preserved example, especially one that never entered circulation, can be worth significantly more. Collectors use grading terms like good, fine, extremely fine, and mint state to describe condition. Mint state coins show no wear at all, even under magnification, and these are where values begin to climb. Adding even more excitement to the 1940 mint Mark penny are mint errors. Errors happen during the minting process and can dramatically increase a coin's value. Some known errors for 1940 pennies include off-center strikes, where the design is noticeably shifted, and broad strikes, where the coin was struck without a proper collar, causing it to spread out. There are also double die errors, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled due to a misaligned die. These errors are scarce, and collectors are always searching for them. One of the most fascinating things about this penny is how its value has evolved over time. Decades ago, people barely noticed old pennies. Today, collectors actively seek out wheat pennies, especially from the 1930s and 1940s. A circulated 1940 mint Mark penny may sell for 10 to 50 cents, depending on condition. but an uncirculated example can sell for several dollars. High-grade specimens, professionally graded and preserved, have sold at auction for over $100, and in some exceptional cases even higher. There are documented auction results where pristine 1940 Philadelphia pennies graded in the highest mint state levels attracted serious bidding. Collectors compete for these coins because once they're locked into private collections, they rarely return to the market. This steady demand is what keeps prices strong and rising over time. Knowing how to identify a genuine 1940 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is important, especially as values increase. First, check the date carefully. The numbers should look even and consistent with other Lincoln pennies from the era. Beneath the date, there should be no mint mark at all. If you see a small letter like D or S, that coin was struck in Denver or San Francisco, not Philadelphia. Next, examine the weight. A genuine 1940 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. A significant difference could indicate damage or a counterfeit. The coin should also be magnetic-free, since copper pennies do not stick to magnets. Look closely at Lincoln's portrait and the wheat ears. Genuine coins have sharp details even on worn examples. Blurry or mushy features can be a red flag. Counterfeits do exist, though they are less common for this date. Most fake pennies are created by altering other dates. That's why it's important to look closely at the shape of the numbers in the date. The style of the 1, 9, and 4 in 1940 has specific characteristics that experienced collectors learn to recognize. There are also some fun and surprising details about the 1940 penny that many people don't know. For example, this coin was in circulation when gasoline cost around 11 cents per gallon and a loaf of bread cost less than 10 cents. A single penny had real purchasing power. Children could buy candy, newspapers, or small toys with just a few cents in their pockets, and the 1940 penny was part of that everyday magic. Another interesting fact is that many 1940 pennies were saved unknowingly in jars and drawers during World War II. People feared metal shortages and saved coins without realizing their future collector value. Some of those jars are still being discovered today, passed down through families, waiting to be examined. Collectors love the 1940 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny because it represents stability before massive change. Just 3 years later, in 1943, pennies would be made from steel due to copper shortages. The 1940 penny is a reminder of the last calm moments before America fully entered the war and its economy transformed forever. This coin also appeals to collectors because it's accessible. You don't need to be wealthy to own one. Beginners can start with circulated examples, while advanced collectors chase high-grade specimens and rare errors. It's a coin that grows with you as your interest and knowledge expand. There's something deeply satisfying about holding a 1940 penny in your hand and realizing where it has been. It may have passed through factories, farms, stores, and pockets during one of the most important decades in American history. It silently witnessed the end of the Great Depression, the build-up to war, and the resilience of a nation finding its strength again. Today, the 1940 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny continues to capture attention not because it's flashy, but because it tells a quiet, honest story. It connects everyday people to history in a personal way. That's why collectors still search through rolls, jars, and collections, hoping to spot one in exceptional condition. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Look at the date. Look for that missing mint mark. You might be holding a small piece of pre-war America, a copper witness to history that has survived more than 8 decades. And sometimes the most valuable stories come from the smallest coins. What if I told you that a plain brown penny you might overlook today was born in the middle of a world at war, and some of those tiny copper coins are now worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars? This is the story of the 1942 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny, a small coin with a big past. The 1942 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint during one of the most dramatic periods in American history. At first glance, it looks almost identical to many other Lincoln pennies. Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait faces right on the front, and the words "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date 1942 surround him. On the back, you'll see 2 simple wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. But behind this simple design lies a story shaped by war, sacrifice, and change. To truly understand this coin, we need to travel back to the year 1942. The United States had just entered World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. By 1942, the nation was fully mobilized for war. Factories were retooled, everyday goods were rationed, and nearly every material was being carefully managed to support the military. Copper was especially important, used for ammunition, electrical wiring, and communications equipment. Even so, early in 1942, the U.S. Mint was still striking pennies in their traditional copper-based alloy. The no mint mark on this coin tells us exactly where it was made. In 1942, pennies struck in Philadelphia did not carry a mint mark. Coins made in Denver had a small D, and those from San Francisco carried an S. The Philadelphia Mint was the main producer of coins, and it struck hundreds of millions of pennies that year. But quantity alone does not tell the whole story. What makes the 1942 no mint mark penny special is where it sits in history, right at the turning point before a major change in American coinage. The metal composition of the 1942 penny is one of its most interesting features. It is made of 95% copper, with the remaining 5% made up of tin and zinc. This is the classic composition used for decades before the war forced changes. By 1943, copper was considered too valuable for pennies, and the mint switched to steel-coated with zinc. That makes 1942 one of the final years of the traditional copper Lincoln cent, adding to its historical importance, design-wise. The 1942 penny belongs to the famous Lincoln Wheat Cent series, which began in 1909. The portrait of Lincoln was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and marked the first time a real person appeared on a regular issue U.S. coin. The wheat ears on the reverse symbolize prosperity and America's agricultural strength. In 1942, as the country prepared for long years of war, that symbolism carried even more meaning. Now let's talk about errors, because this is where collector interest really starts to heat up. While most 1942 no mint mark pennies are common, certain error varieties can be surprisingly valuable. One of the most well-known is the 1942 copper penny struck on an off-metal planchet. In rare cases, blanks meant for other coins were accidentally fed into the penny presses. These mistakes escaped the mint and eventually found their way into circulation. There are also double die varieties, where parts of the design appear doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. On some 1942 pennies, collectors look closely at the date and the word Liberty for signs of doubling. These details can be subtle, but when confirmed, they can dramatically increase the coin's value. So why would a penny from 1942 be worth more than 1 cent today? Rarity is one factor, but condition plays an even bigger role. Most of these coins circulated heavily during the war years, meaning they were used again and again. As a result, truly high-grade examples are much harder to find. A 1942 no mint mark penny that still has sharp details, full wheat lines, and original luster can command strong prices among collectors. To put real numbers behind this, let's look at auction results and collector sales. A worn example of a 1942 Philadelphia penny might be worth only a few cents, maybe up to $1. But in uncirculated condition, values climb quickly. Coins graded in the higher mint state levels have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars. Exceptional examples with near-perfect surfaces have reached well into the high hundreds. And if the coin has a verified error, such as a strong double die, prices can jump into the thousands. Identifying a real 1942 no mint mark Lincoln penny is simple at first, but authenticity becomes more important as value increases. Start by checking the date and confirming there is no mint mark below the date. Next, examine the color and weight. A genuine copper 1942 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams and have a solid copper appearance. Be cautious of altered coins, especially since some people try to change dates or remove mint marks to create fake rarities. Magnification is your best friend when checking for errors. Use a simple magnifying glass to inspect the date, lettering, and Lincoln's profile. Look for signs of doubling that appear rounded and natural, not flat or scratched. If a coin appears unusually valuable, professional grading and authentication are strongly recommended. Reputable grading services can confirm whether a coin is genuine and assign it a grade that helps determine its market value. There are also some fun and surprising facts tied to the 1942 penny. Many Americans at the time saved pennies in jars to support scrap metal drives. believing their copper might help the war effort. While pennies were not officially collected for scrap, the idea shows how deeply people connected everyday objects to national sacrifice. The 1942 penny was literally in people's pockets as news from the front lines filled newspapers and radios. Another interesting detail is how close this coin sits to one of the most famous mistakes in U.S. coin history. In 1943, pennies were supposed to be made of steel. However, a few copper blanks from 1942 were accidentally used, creating the legendary 1943 copper penny. Because of that, collectors often look closely at 1942 pennies as part of the story leading up to that historic error. Collectors today love the 1942 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it represents the last moments of normalcy before wartime changes reshaped American coinage. It connects history, art, and industry in a way few coins can. Holding one is like holding a small piece of the American home front during World War II. This coin also appeals to new collectors because it is accessible. You don't need a fortune to own a piece of history. Many people start their collections with a simple wheat penny, and the 1942 issue is a natural choice because of its story and availability. At the same time, advanced collectors chase high-grade examples and rare errors, keeping demand strong. As we come to the end of this story, remember that the 1942 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is more than just old copper. It is a witness to a nation at war, a symbol of resilience, and a reminder that even the smallest objects can carry powerful history. The next time you see a worn brown penny, take a second look. You never know if it might have a story like this one, waiting to be discovered. Imagine pulling an ordinary-looking penny from your pocket, one you've seen 1,000 times before, and discovering it was struck during one of the most dramatic moments in American history. A single cent that quietly witnessed World War II, carried hope through hardship, and today might be worth far more than its face value. This is the story of the 1944 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a small copper coin with a surprisingly big legacy. The 1944 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the United States during a pivotal year. When people say no-mint mark, they mean the coin was made at the main mint in Philadelphia, which traditionally did not place a mint mark on pennies at that time. This simple detail matters to collectors because it helps identify where and how the coin was struck. At first glance, the 1944 Lincoln penny looks familiar, but the story behind it is anything but ordinary. To understand this coin, we have to go back to 1944. The world was deep into World War II. American factories were running day and night, producing weapons, vehicles, and supplies. Nearly every part of daily life was affected by the war effort, including the coins in people's pockets. Just 1 year earlier, in 1943, the U.S. government had stopped using copper for pennies because copper was desperately needed for ammunition and electrical equipment. Instead, pennies were made from steel coated with zinc, giving them a silver-gray look. But by 1944, the situation shifted again. The United States found a way to return to copper-colored pennies, but not in the way most people expect. The copper used in 1944 pennies didn't come from freshly mined sources. Instead, it came largely from recycled shell casings collected from military training grounds. These spent brass shell casings were melted down and turned into coins. That means every 1944 Lincoln penny made of copper is directly connected to the war effort, transformed from tools of war into everyday money. The design of the coin honors Abraham Lincoln, whose portrait appears on the front. This design was first introduced in 1909 to mark the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, making it one of the longest-running designs in U.S. coin history. On the front, you see Lincoln's profile facing right, along with the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the year 1944. On the back, you find the classic wheat ears design, often called the wheat penny, with 2 stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, along with the motto E pluribus unum. The 1944 no-mint mark penny was produced by the United States Mint in Philadelphia. Millions were made because the country needed coinage for daily commerce. At first glance, that might make the coin seem common and unremarkable. But value in coin collecting is not just about how many were made. It's about condition, history, and the unexpected surprises that sometimes slip through the minting process. One of the most important features of the 1944 no-mint mark penny is its metal composition. Most were struck on a bronze alloy made of about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This returned the penny to its familiar reddish-brown color after the unusual steel cents of 1943. Over time, these coins can appear red, red-brown, or brown, depending on how much original copper luster remains. Collectors pay close attention to this color because it has a big impact on value. Errors and varieties are another reason the 1944 penny captures so much attention. During the hectic wartime production, mistakes happened. Some 1944 pennies were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943. These are extremely rare and highly valuable. A genuine 1944 steel penny can sell for tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes even more, depending on condition and authenticity. This possibility alone keeps collectors and everyday people alike checking their old pennies. There are also less dramatic but still interesting errors, such as doubled lettering, off-center strikes, or coins struck on the wrong thickness of metal. While not every error is worth a fortune, they add to the excitement surrounding the 1944 no-mint mark penny. Even a small variation can turn an ordinary-looking coin into something special. So why is this penny considered rare or valuable when so many were made? The answer lies in survival and condition. While millions were produced, many were heavily circulated during the 1940s and 1950s. Pennies were used constantly, and few people thought to save them. As a result, high-grade examples with sharp details and original luster are much harder to find today. Coins that look almost new, especially those with bright red color, are especially prized. Auction records show just how much condition matters. A worn 1944 no-mint mark penny might be worth only a few cents above face value. But a well-preserved example graded in mint condition can sell for hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, exceptional coins with perfect surfaces and strong color have sold for over $1,000 at major auctions. And when it comes to the rare 1944 steel cent error, verified examples have brought prices ranging from $30,000 to well over $100,000. Identifying a real 1944 no-mint mark penny is easier than you might think, but it requires careful attention. First, check the date and make sure there is no mint mark below the year. If there's no letter, it was made in Philadelphia. Next, look at the color. Most genuine 1944 pennies should be copper-colored, not silver. If you find one that looks silver, don't get too excited just yet. Some copper pennies have been plated or altered to look like steel. A simple magnet test can help. Copper pennies are not magnetic, but steel pennies are. If a 1944 penny sticks to a magnet, it could be something special, or it could be a fake or altered coin. Weight is another clue. A normal 1944 copper penny weighs about 3.11 grams, while a steel penny weighs around 2.7 grams. Any serious find should always be checked by a professional coin grading service to confirm authenticity. There are also many myths surrounding this coin. Some people believe every 1944 penny is valuable, which simply isn't true. Others think that any shiny or unusual-looking penny must be rare. In reality, cleaning or polishing a coin can actually reduce its value. Collectors prefer coins with natural surfaces, even if they show some age. One surprising detail about the 1944 penny is how quickly it returned to copper after the steel cents of 1943. Many Americans at the time disliked the steel pennies because they were easily confused with dimes and prone to rust. The return to a copper-colored penny in 1944 was welcomed, even though the metal itself came from recycled war materials. This connection between everyday life and the global conflict makes the coin especially meaningful. Collectors today love the 1944 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it represents resilience and adaptation. It tells a story of a nation at war, finding creative solutions to material shortages while maintaining normal life at home. For many collectors, owning this coin is like holding a small piece of American history in their hand. Another reason collectors are drawn to this penny is nostalgia. For older generations, wheat pennies were once common pocket change. Finding one today can spark memories of childhood, simpler times, and the thrill of checking coins for rare dates. For newer collectors, the 1944 penny is often a gateway into the wider world of coin collecting, offering history, variety, and the chance, however slim, of discovering something extraordinary. Even after more than 80 years, the 1944 no-mint mark Lincoln penny continues to spark curiosity. It reminds us that value isn't always obvious at first glance. Sometimes, the most ordinary objects carry the most remarkable stories. A small copper coin, born from recycled shell casings during a world war, still circulates in conversations, collections, and dreams of hidden treasure. So the next time you come across an old penny, take a moment to look at the date. If you see 1944 with no mint mark, you're not just holding a piece of spare change. You're holding a survivor from a defining moment in history, a coin that bridges the battlefield and the home front. And who knows, that quiet little penny might still have a surprise waiting to be discovered. Most people have held this coin without ever realizing what it represents, but one quiet detail from 1946 turns the simple penny into a powerful piece of American history. And in some cases, a coin worth far more than 1 cent. The 1946 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a United States 1-cent coin struck just after World War II ended. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary old penny, but it carries the weight of a nation transitioning from war to peace. This coin was produced during a moment when America was rebuilding its economy, reshaping its identity, and redefining everyday life for millions of families. The year 1946 was significant. World War II had officially ended only months earlier. Soldiers were returning home, factories were shifting from wartime production back to consumer goods, and the U.S. economy was entering a new chapter. During the war, copper had been a critical metal for ammunition and military equipment. Because of this, the U.S. Mint had already experimented with alternative metals, including steel pennies in 1943. By 1946, copper supplies were recovering, but not without challenges. This penny was minted by the United States Mint at its Philadelphia facility, which traditionally did not place a mint mark on coins. That is why the absence of a letter under the date does not mean the coin is rare by default. Instead, it confirms that the coin was struck in Philadelphia. Millions were produced, but survival in collectible condition is a very different story. On the front of the coin is the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. The designer, Victor David Brenner, created an image that symbolized honesty, leadership, and unity. In 1946, those qualities felt especially meaningful. Americans saw Lincoln not just as a historical figure, but as a symbol of national strength and recovery. The reverse side features the wheat ears design, often called the wheat penny. 2 wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum above. Wheat pennies were minted from 1909 through 1958, and they represent an era when coins were designed with agricultural symbolism, reflecting America's roots and values. The metal composition of the 1946 penny is one of its most interesting features. It is made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This returned the penny to its traditional copper makeup after the unusual wartime changes. Many collectors see the 1946 penny as the first true post-war copper cent, which adds emotional and historical value beyond the metal itself. While most 1946 no-mint mark pennies are common in circulated condition, certain varieties and errors can make this coin far more desirable. One of the most talked about errors involves double die obverse. These occur when the coin die strikes the design slightly off alignment, creating a doubling effect on letters or numbers. On some 1946 pennies, collectors have discovered noticeable doubling in the date or in the word Liberty. Another error that adds value is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank is not properly aligned during the strike, resulting in a design that appears shifted. Minor off-center errors are interesting, but dramatic ones that still show the full date can command strong collector interest. Clipped planchets are also seen on some 1946 pennies. This error occurs when a piece of the coin's edge is missing because the metal strip was improperly cut before striking. These coins are instantly recognizable and often kept as conversation pieces within collections, so why would a penny that was minted in large numbers be valuable today? The answer lies in condition, rarity of errors, and collector demand. Most 1946 pennies were heavily used in everyday transactions. Finding one with sharp details, full wheat lines, and original red copper color is surprisingly difficult. In circulated condition. A typical 1946 no-mint mark penny may only be worth a few cents. However, in uncirculated condition, values increase quickly. Coins graded by professional services can sell for $10, $20, or even $50, depending on their preservation and eye appeal. The real excitement begins with high-grade examples. A 1946 penny graded mint state 66 red, meaning it retains most of its original copper color and shows minimal wear, has sold at auction for several $100s. Exceptional specimens with near-perfect surfaces have reached even higher prices when multiple collectors compete. Error coins can reach entirely different price levels. A confirmed double-die 1946 penny has sold for thousands of dollars, depending on the strength of the doubling and the coin's condition. These are not everyday finds, but they prove that even a seemingly ordinary penny can become extraordinary. Identifying a genuine 1946 no-mint mark penny is straightforward, but identifying a valuable one requires careful attention. First, check the date. The numbers should be clear and evenly spaced. Look directly below the date. If there is no letter, that confirms it was minted in Philadelphia. Next, examine the color. Original copper pennies range from deep brown to bright red. Extremely shiny pennies may have been cleaned, which significantly reduces value. Natural aging should look even and smooth, not patchy or harsh. Use a magnifying glass to inspect the lettering. Look closely at Liberty and the date for any doubling. True double die errors show rounded, separated lines, not flat shadows. Flat doubling is usually a result of wear or machine strike issues and does not add value. Weighing the coin can also help. A genuine 1946 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant differences could indicate damage or a counterfeit. Although counterfeit pennies from this era are rare. One surprising fact about the 1946 penny is how many were saved by returning soldiers. Many veterans kept small items from the year they came home, including coins. As a result, some uncirculated examples survive tucked away in drawers, albums, and keepsake boxes. Another fun detail is that the wheat penny design ended just 12 years later. In 1959, the Lincoln Memorial replaced the wheat ears, making all wheat pennies, including the 1946 issue, part of a closed and highly collectible series. Collectors love the 1946 no-mint mark penny because it represents renewal. It marks the first full year after the war, the return to traditional materials, and the continuation of a design that Americans trusted and recognized. It also appeals to beginner collectors. The coin is affordable, historically meaningful, and easy to find. At the same time, advanced collectors chase high-grade examples and rare errors, making it a coin that grows with your collecting journey. The 1946 penny tells a story far bigger than its size. It speaks of factories reopening, families rebuilding, and a nation stepping forward after years of sacrifice. Holding one is like holding a quiet reminder of resilience and hope. So the next time you see a worn old penny dated 1946, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. You might be holding a small piece of American recovery, or possibly a hidden treasure that collectors are still searching for today. And that is what makes the 1946 no-mint mark Lincoln penny so fascinating. It isn't just a coin. It's a witness to history, waiting patiently to be noticed. Most people walk past pennies every day without a second thought, but what if I told you that one small brown coin from 1951 could quietly hold a story of post-war America, hidden value, and surprising collector demand that still exists today? The coin we are talking about is the 1951 D. Lincoln wheat penny, a 1-cent coin struck in Denver during a very important moment in United States history. At first glance, it looks simple and ordinary, but once you understand where it came from and why it matters, you begin to see why collectors still search for this penny more than 70 years later. The Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for over 4 decades by 1951. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, making it the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person instead of a symbolic figure. By 1951, Americans were deeply familiar with Lincoln's calm profile on the front of the penny, but the nation itself was changing fast. The year 1951 sat squarely in the early Cold War era. World War II had ended only 6 years earlier, and the United States was rebuilding, growing, and redefining its place in the world. Factories were running at full speed, families were expanding, and everyday money like pennies was moving through millions of hands. The Denver Mint played a crucial role during this time, producing coins needed for a rapidly expanding economy. That is why the small letter D beneath the date on this penny matters so much. It tells us exactly where this coin was born. The 1951 D penny was struck by the United States Mint at its Denver facility. That single letter D is not decoration. It is a mark of origin, and to collectors, mint marks can mean the difference between a common coin and a valuable one. Denver was known for strong production numbers, but not all coins were struck perfectly, and that is where the story becomes interesting. Let's talk about what this penny is made of. The 1951 D Lincoln penny is composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This copper-heavy composition gives the coin its warm reddish-brown color and noticeable weight. If you hold one in your hand, it feels solid, heavier than modern pennies made mostly of zinc. This metal content alone makes the coin appealing to many collectors, especially those who appreciate classic copper cents. On the front of the coin, you see Lincoln facing to the right, with the words "In God We Trust" along the top edge. Liberty appears to the left of Lincoln, and the date 1951 is placed on the right, with the small D mint mark just below it. The design is clean, balanced, and instantly recognizable, which is part of why the Lincoln cent remains one of the most collected coins in American history. The reverse side features the famous wheat ears design, which is why collectors often call these coins wheat pennies. Two curved wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum sitting above. This design symbolized agriculture, growth, and stability, themes that resonated deeply with Americans recovering from war and entering a new era of prosperity. So why does the 1951 D penny stand out when millions were made? The answer lies in condition, errors, and collector demand. While the total mintage was high, truly well-preserved examples are far less common than you might expect. Most of these pennies were used heavily in daily transactions. They were dropped into pockets, cash registers, and jars, slowly wearing down the fine details that collectors value today. Coins that survived in excellent condition, especially those with strong original luster and minimal wear, are far scarcer. A 1951 D penny that still shows sharp wheat lines, clear lettering, and a clean portrait of Lincoln is immediately more desirable than one that is dark, scratched, or heavily worn. Errors also play a major role in value. Some 1951 D pennies were struck with off-center designs, doubled letters, or weak strikes where details appear faded. These mistakes happened during the minting process and were never intended to leave the mint, yet many did. Error coins like these can command significant premiums because they are unique and cannot be reproduced. Collectors have paid close attention to auction records involving high-grade 1951 D pennies. In circulated condition, these coins are usually worth only a few cents to $1. But when you move into higher grades, the story changes dramatically. A well-preserved example with strong red copper color can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, top-condition coins certified by professional grading services have sold for several $100s at major auctions. What separates a common coin from a valuable one is often invisible to the untrained eye. Color matters. Red copper pennies are far more valuable than brown ones because copper naturally darkens over time. Strike quality matters too. A sharp strike with full detail shows the coin was made using fresh dies and careful pressure. This brings us to an important question. How do you know if your 1951 D penny is real? Authentic examples will have a clear D mint mark that looks like part of the coin, not added later. The edges should be smooth, and the coin should weigh about 3.11 grams. Fake pennies often have incorrect weight, unusual color, or a mint mark that looks glued or stamped on after the fact. Magnification helps. Under a magnifying glass, real coins show natural wear patterns and consistent texture. Fakes often look rough or uneven in places that should be smooth. If you ever suspect you have a valuable example, professional grading is the safest way to confirm authenticity. There are also a few surprising facts about this coin that many people don't realize. In 1951, pennies were still essential for everyday purchases. Candy, newspapers, and small snacks often cost just a few cents. This meant pennies circulated constantly, which explains why finding pristine examples today is so difficult. Another fun detail is that many 1951D pennies still exist in old jars, drawers, and inherited collections. People save them without realizing their potential future value. Even today, collectors regularly discover high-quality examples that have been hiding in plain sight for decades. Collectors love the 1951D Lincoln penny because it represents a perfect balance between history and accessibility. It is old enough to feel historic, but not so rare that it is impossible to find. It connects directly to a time when America was reshaping itself, when copper coins jingled in pockets, and when everyday money felt permanent and solid. For many collectors, owning a 1951D penny is about more than price. It is about holding a piece of post-war America, a coin that passed through countless hands during a defining era. Each scratch and mark tells a silent story, and each well-preserved example feels like a small miracle of survival. As interest in classic copper coins continues to grow, the 1951D Lincoln penny remains firmly on collector watchlists. Whether you find one in change, inherit a collection, or buy one intentionally, this coin rewards curiosity and careful attention. So the next time you see a brown penny with a small D under the date, don't rush past it. Take a closer look. You might be holding more than a single cent. You might be holding a quiet witness to American history, waiting to be noticed after all these years. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a penny that looks ordinary, but could quietly carry decades of history, hidden stories, and real collector value. A penny that millions of Americans once used for candy, newspapers, or bus fare, yet today makes collectors stop and look twice. That penny is the 1952 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, and its story is far more interesting than most people ever realize. The 1952 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in the early 1950s, during a time when America was finding its footing after World War II. When people hear no-mint mark, it doesn't mean the coin is missing something by mistake. It actually tells us exactly where the coin was made, and that detail alone opens the door to understanding its history and value. This coin features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design Americans had already known for more than 40 years by 1952. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. By the time 1952 arrived, the design had become a symbol of everyday American life, passing through countless hands during times of war, peace, prosperity, and uncertainty. The year 1952 itself sits in a fascinating place in American history. The country was deep into the Cold War era. The Korean War was still ongoing, television was entering more homes, and American industry was booming. Coins were not made as collectibles. They were made to be used, spent, scratched, dropped, and forgotten. The 1952 penny was struck by the United States Mint to meet everyday demand, not to impress collectors decades later. When a Lincoln penny from 1952 has no mint mark, it means it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. At that time, the Philadelphia Mint did not place mint marks on pennies. Only coins made in Denver or San Francisco carried a letter. So the absence of a mint mark is actually a sign of authenticity and origin, not an error. The metal composition of the 1952 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is one of its most important features. It is made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This gives the coin its rich reddish-brown color when new, and its warm brown tones as it ages. Unlike modern pennies, which are mostly zinc, these older copper cents have a weight and feel that many collectors instantly recognize. On the front of the coin, Lincoln faces to the right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the year 1952 to the right. The back design features the classic wheat ears, often called the wheat cent reverse. 2 wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum at the top. This wheat design was used from 1909 until 1958, making the 1952 penny part of a beloved and historic series. At first glance, the 1952 no-mint mark penny does not seem rare. Millions were made and many still exist today. However, value is not only about how many were produced. It is about condition, originality, and small details that survived decades of circulation. Most 1952 pennies were heavily used. They show wear, darkening, and surface marks. Finding one in high-grade condition is far more difficult than people expect. Collectors pay close attention to how sharp Lincoln's hair looks, how clear the wheat lines are on the reverse, and whether the coin still has original red or red-brown color. A penny that looks dull or worn might only be worth a few cents over face value. But a well-preserved example can be a completely different story. Errors also play an important role in the appeal of the 1952 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny. While major errors are uncommon, collectors have found examples with off-center strikes, doubled lettering, or unusual die cracks. These errors happened during the minting process and were never meant to leave the mint. When they did, they created coins that stand out sharply from normal issues. One of the most exciting aspects of this penny is how its value changes based on condition. In circulated condition, a typical 1952 no-mint Mark penny may be worth only a small premium, often just a few cents to $1. But in uncirculated condition, where the coin shows no wear and retains strong detail, prices can climb quickly. Coins graded in high mint state levels can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, especially if they have strong original color. There have been real auction results that surprise casual observers. High-grade 1952 no-mint Mark Lincoln pennies with bright red surfaces have sold for impressive prices at major coin auctions. Collectors are willing to pay for quality, originality, and eye appeal. A single-point difference on a grading scale can mean a large jump in value. Identifying a genuine 1952 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is easier than many people think, but it still requires careful observation. First, check the date. The numbers should look even and natural, not altered or reshaped. Second, look below the date. If there is no letter, that is correct for Philadelphia issues. Third, weigh the coin if possible. A real copper penny from 1952 should weigh about 3.11 grams. A significantly lighter coin may indicate damage or alteration. Pay attention to the color and surface. Genuine coins usually show natural aging, not harsh or artificial shine. Be cautious of coins that look too perfect without any signs of age. Cleaning can lower value dramatically, even if the coin looks shiny. Collectors prefer coins that have not been cleaned or polished. One fun fact about the 1952 Lincoln penny is that it was minted during a time when copper was still considered plentiful. Just a decade later, rising metal prices would begin to change how pennies were made. This makes copper cents from the early 1950s especially appealing to collectors who enjoy the feel of classic American coinage. Another interesting detail is that many 1952 pennies sat unnoticed in jars, drawers, and old collections for decades. They were never pulled from circulation because no one expected them to be valuable. Today, those same pennies are being rediscovered, examined, and appreciated in a whole new way. Collectors love the 1952 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny because it represents a bridge between history and everyday life. It is old enough to feel historic, yet common enough that people can realistically hope to find one. It connects the legacy of Abraham Lincoln, the post-war American economy, and the craftsmanship of traditional copper coinage. For new collectors, this penny offers an affordable entry point into classic U.S. coins. For experienced collectors, high-grade examples offer a challenge and a sense of achievement. For historians, it is a small but meaningful artifact from a pivotal era in American life. As you look at your spare change or old family coin jars, remember that history doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it sits quietly, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. The 1952 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny is a reminder that even the smallest coin can carry a powerful story, and that the next time you see an old penny, it might be worth taking a closer look. Most people would never look twice at a brown penny from the 1950s, yet one small detail on a 1956 Lincoln cent has turned ordinary pocket change into a coin that collectors quietly hunt for, sometimes paying far more than 1 cent, and occasionally hundreds of dollars just to own the right example. The coin we are talking about today is the 1956 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a 1-cent coin that seems simple at first glance but carries a deeper story of American history, post-war growth, and the hidden world of coin collecting that exists right under our noses. This penny was struck in 1956, during a time when the United States was booming with confidence. World War II was over, families were growing, cities were expanding, and everyday commerce depended heavily on small change. Pennies were used constantly and millions were needed. The letter D below the date tells us this coin was made at the Denver Mint, one of the major facilities of the United States Mint. On the front of the coin is the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design that had already been in use for nearly 50 years by 1956. Lincoln first appeared on the penny in 1909, chosen to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. By the mid-1950s, his face had become one of the most recognized images in American life, seen daily by people of all ages. The year 1956 itself was not marked by a single dramatic event related to coinage, but it sat squarely in the middle of a fascinating era. The country was modernizing quickly, televisions were entering homes, highways were being built, and money was flowing. The Denver Mint alone produced more than 1 billion pennies that year, a staggering number that shows just how important the humble cent was in everyday transactions. Despite being made in huge quantities, not all 1956 D pennies are equal. Like many coins of the era, they were struck using copper alloy planchets made of about 95% copper and small amounts of tin and zinc. This gives the coin its warm reddish color when new, though most examples today have darkened to brown after decades of circulation. The design itself is simple but iconic. Lincoln faces right on the front, with the words "In God we trust" above his head and "Liberty" to the left. The date 1956 and the small D mint mark sit to the right. On the back, the coin features 2 wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, with the Latin phrase E pluribus unum across the top. This is why collectors call it a wheat penny, a design that ended just 2 years later in 1958. One reason the 1956 D penny is so interesting is because it comes near the end of the wheat penny era. Many collectors focus on this period because it represents a classic look that disappeared forever when the Lincoln Memorial replaced the wheat ears in 1959. That later design honored Lincoln again, this time featuring the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. While most 1956 D pennies are common, value begins to rise when condition enters the picture. A penny that circulated for years, picked up scratches, and turned dark brown is usually worth only a few cents. But coins that were saved early, especially those with original red color, can be surprisingly valuable today. Collectors grade coins based on wear and surface quality. A high-grade 1956 D penny with sharp details, no major marks, and strong color can sell for many times its face value. In top condition, known as mint state, these pennies can reach values in the tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on how perfect they are. Errors and unusual variations add another layer of excitement. Some 1956 D pennies were struck with slight mistakes that escaped the mint and entered circulation. These errors can include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, or die cracks, which appear as raised lines on the surface caused by damaged dies. There are also repunched mint marks, where the D appears doubled or slightly shifted due to adjustments during production. These error coins are far less common than regular strikes, and collectors actively seek them out. A clearly visible mint error on a 1956 D penny can significantly increase its value, sometimes selling for hundreds of dollars at auction depending on rarity and condition. Real auction records show how much interest there is in this coin. High-grade examples certified by professional grading services have sold for impressive amounts, especially those with bright red surfaces and minimal imperfections. While the average circulated coin may only bring a small premium, the best examples demonstrate how condition can transform a simple penny into a serious collectible. Identifying a real 1956 D penny is straightforward, but spotting an altered or fake example requires care. First, always check the date and mint mark. The D should look natural and consistent with the rest of the design. Added mint marks are a common trick, where someone takes a Philadelphia coin and tries to attach a fake D. Under magnification, these alterations often look rough or out of place. Weight and metal composition also matter. A genuine 1956 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Coins that are significantly lighter or heavier may have been altered or damaged. The color should also match copper alloy, not steel or another metal. Remember, steel pennies were only made in 1943, not 1956. One fun fact about the 1956 D penny is how many people unknowingly owned one at some point. Because these coins circulated widely for decades, millions passed through hands without a second thought. Some still sit in old jars, drawers, and inherited collections, waiting to be rediscovered. Another surprising detail is that 1956 pennies were among the last to be struck before major changes in minting technology began to appear. The late 1950s and early 1960s brought improvements in quality control and production speed, making earlier coins like this a snapshot of mid-century minting practices. Collectors today love the 1956 D Lincoln penny because it balances accessibility with challenge. It is easy to find a basic example, but difficult to find one in truly exceptional condition. That combination keeps interest alive, encouraging collectors to upgrade their coins and search for better examples over time. For new collectors, this penny often serves as a gateway into the world of wheat cents. It connects history, art, and everyday life in a way that few other objects can. For experienced collectors, it represents the thrill of finding quality and rarity where others see only spare change. As you look at a 1956 D penny, you are holding a small piece of America's post-war story. It traveled through a nation on the move, passed between countless hands, and survived decades of use. Most were worn down, but a lucky few remained untouched, preserving their original beauty. The next time you come across an old penny, take a closer look at the date and the mint mark. That tiny D might tell a story you never expected. Somewhere out there, a forgotten 1956 D Lincoln penny could still be waiting, quietly carrying its history, its value, and its secrets, ready to surprise the person who finally takes the time to notice it. Most people would walk right past this coin without a second glance. But what if I told you that a simple brown penny from the 1950s could still be hiding surprising value today, and in some cases even spark bidding wars among collectors who know exactly what to look for? The coin we're talking about is the 1957 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a small piece of copper that quietly carries a big story. At first glance, it looks like just another old cent. But behind its worn surface is a snapshot of American history, craftsmanship, and the everyday money millions of people once held in their hands without realizing what it might become decades later. This penny was struck in 1957, during a time when the United States was experiencing rapid growth and optimism. If you don't see a mint mark under the date, that means it was made at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use a mint mark on pennies during that era. In 1957, Philadelphia produced more than 1 billion Lincoln cents, making this coin very common when it was new. These pennies were made to support a growing economy where cash transactions were part of daily life, from buying a loaf of bread to paying for a newspaper. The Lincoln penny itself had already been around for nearly 50 years by 1957. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, making it the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real person. By the time the 1957 version was released, Americans were deeply familiar with Lincoln's profile. It had become a symbol of stability, honesty, and national pride. The design of the 1957 no-mint mark penny is simple but iconic. On the front, you see Lincoln's right-facing portrait, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Above his head is the word Liberty, and in front of his face is the familiar phrase "In God We Trust." Below is the date, 1957. The back of the coin features two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This is why collectors often call it a wheat penny. The wheat design represents prosperity and abundance, a fitting symbol for a nation that was growing and modernizing. One of the most important features of this penny is its metal composition. Unlike modern pennies, the 1957 Lincoln cent is made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This gives it a solid feel and a warm, reddish color when it's well preserved. Over time, many of these coins darkened or turned brown due to oxidation, but those that retain their original red color are especially desirable today. At first, it might sound strange to hear that a coin with over 1 billion pieces made could be valuable. But rarity in coin collecting is not always about how many were produced. It's about how many survive in good condition. Most 1957 pennies were heavily used, scratched, dropped, and stored loosely in jars or drawers. As a result, finding one in high-grade condition is much harder than the original mintage numbers suggest. Condition plays a huge role in value. A worn 1957 no-mint mark penny that has been in circulation for decades might only be worth a few cents above face value. But a well-preserved example, especially one with strong detail and minimal marks, can be worth significantly more. Coins that still show a bright red copper color are the most valuable, because copper naturally darkens over time. Another reason collectors pay close attention to this coin is the possibility of mint errors. Errors are mistakes that happen during the minting process, and they can turn an ordinary penny into something special. Some 1957 pennies show doubled lettering, where parts of the date or words appear slightly doubled. Others may have off-center strikes, clipped edges, or die cracks. These errors were not intentional, and that's exactly why collectors love them. There have been real auction examples that show just how much value this penny can reach. A 1957 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny in pristine condition, graded at the highest levels, has sold for thousands of dollars at major coin auctions. Even examples with noticeable errors have fetched hundreds of dollars, depending on the type and clarity of the mistake. These sales prove that even a common coin can become extraordinary under the right circumstances. So, how can you tell if you have a genuine 1957 no-mint Mark penny and not a fake or altered coin? The first step is to look closely at the date. It should appear clean and natural, not altered or reshaped. Check under the date for a mint mark. If there is none, that's correct for a Philadelphia issue. The weight is another clue. A genuine 1957 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant differences could indicate a counterfeit or damaged coin. The metal itself also tells a story. A real copper penny from 1957 will not stick to a magnet. If it does, that's a red flag. The edges should show a solid copper color, not a different metal underneath. Many fakes or altered coins fail these simple tests. One fun and surprising fact about the 1957 penny is how much buying power 1 cent had at the time. In the 1950s, a penny could still buy small items like candy or gum. Today, that same penny might be worth far more than its original purchasing power, especially to a collector who understands its history and condition. Collectors love the 1957 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny because it represents the final years of the wheat penny design. Just 2 years later, in 1959, the reverse design would change to feature the Lincoln Memorial. That makes the 1957 penny part of the closing chapter of a classic era in American coinage. It's a bridge between old traditions and modern designs. There's also something deeply personal about this coin. Many collectors remember seeing wheat pennies in circulation as children or finding them in change from their parents or grandparents. Holding a 1957 penny today can feel like holding a small piece of family history, a reminder of a time when coins were made of real copper and designed with lasting symbolism. Even though millions were made, each surviving example has traveled a unique path. Some sat untouched in rolls, others passed through countless hands, and a few escaped circulation entirely. That unpredictability is part of the magic of coin collecting. You never know which ordinary-looking coin might turn out to be something special. As collectors continue to search through old jars, rolls, and inherited collections, the 1957 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny remains a favorite target. It's accessible, historically rich, and full of potential surprises. Whether it's a high-grade example, a bright red copper beauty, or a rare mint error, this coin keeps drawing attention decade after decade. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look at the date, the color, and the details. That small copper coin might be telling a much bigger story than you expect. And who knows, the humble 1957 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny sitting quietly in your collection could be waiting for its moment to shine, reminding us that history often hides in the smallest places. Most people would walk right past this coin without a second glance. But what if I told you that a simple brown penny from the 1950s could still be hiding surprising value today, and in some cases even spark bidding wars among collectors who know exactly what to look for? The coin we're talking about is the 1957 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny, a small piece of copper that quietly carries a big story. At first glance, it looks like just another old cent. But behind its worn surface is a snapshot of American history, craftsmanship, and the everyday money millions of people once held in their hands without realizing what it might become decades later. This penny was struck in 1957, during a time when the United States was experiencing rapid growth and optimism. If you don't see a mint mark under the date, that means it was made at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use a mint mark on pennies during that era. In 1957, Philadelphia produced more than 1 billion Lincoln cents, making this coin very common when it was new. These pennies were made to support a growing economy where cash transactions were part of daily life. from buying a loaf of bread to paying for a newspaper. The Lincoln penny itself had already been around for nearly 50 years by 1957. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, making it the first regular U.S. coin to feature a real person. By the time the 1957 version was released, Americans were deeply familiar with Lincoln's profile. It had become a symbol of stability, honesty, and national pride. The design of the 1957 no-mint mark penny is simple but iconic. On the front, you see Lincoln's right-facing portrait, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner. Above his head is the word liberty, and in front of his face is the familiar phrase, "In God we trust." Below is the date, 1957. The back of the coin features two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This is why collectors often call it a wheat penny. The wheat design represents prosperity and abundance, a fitting symbol for a nation that was growing and modernizing. One of the most important features of this penny is its metal composition. Unlike modern pennies, the 1957 Lincoln cent is made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This gives it a solid feel and a warm, reddish color when it's well preserved. Over time, many of these coins darkened or turned brown due to oxidation, but those that retain their original red color are especially desirable today. At first, it might sound strange to hear that a coin with over 1 billion pieces made could be valuable. But rarity in coin collecting is not always about how many were produced. It's about how many survive in good condition. Most 1957 pennies were heavily used, scratched, dropped, and stored loosely in jars or drawers. As a result, finding one in high-grade condition is much harder than the original mintage numbers suggest. Condition plays a huge role in value. A worn 1957 no-mint mark penny that has been in circulation for decades might only be worth a few cents above face value. But a well-preserved example, especially one with strong detail and minimal marks, can be worth significantly more. Coins that still show a bright red copper color are the most valuable, because copper naturally darkens over time. Another reason collectors pay close attention to this coin is the possibility of mint errors. Errors are mistakes that happen during the minting process, and they can turn an ordinary penny into something special. Some 1957 pennies show doubled lettering, where parts of the date or words appear slightly doubled. Others may have off-center strikes, clipped edges, or die cracks. These errors were not intentional, and that's exactly why collectors love them. There have been real auction examples that show just how much value this penny can reach. A 1957 no-mint mark Lincoln penny in pristine condition, graded at the highest levels, has sold for thousands of dollars at major coin auctions. Even examples with noticeable errors have fetched hundreds of dollars, depending on the type and clarity of the mistake. These sales prove that even a common coin can become extraordinary under the right circumstances. So, how can you tell if you have a genuine 1957 no-mint mark penny and not a fake or altered coin? The first step is to look closely at the date. It should appear clean and natural, not altered or reshaped. Check under the date for a mint mark. If there is none, that's correct for a Philadelphia issue. The weight is another clue. A genuine 1957 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant differences could indicate a counterfeit or damaged coin. The metal itself also tells a story. A real copper penny from 1957 will not stick to a magnet. If it does, that's a red flag. The edges should show a solid copper color, not a different metal underneath. Many fakes or altered coins fail these simple tests. One fun and surprising fact about the 1957 penny is how much buying power 1 cent had at the time. In the 1950s, a penny could still buy small items like candy or gum. Today, that same penny might be worth far more than its original purchasing power, especially to a collector who understands its history and condition. Collectors love the 1957 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it represents the final years of the wheat penny design. Just 2 years later, in 1959, the reverse design would change to feature the Lincoln Memorial. That makes the 1957 penny part of the closing chapter of a classic era in American coinage. It's a bridge between old traditions and modern designs. There's also something deeply personal about this coin. Many collectors remember seeing wheat pennies in circulation as children or finding them in change from their parents or grandparents. Holding a 1957 penny today can feel like holding a small piece of family history, a reminder of a time when coins were made of real copper and designed with lasting symbolism. Even though millions were made, each surviving example has traveled a unique path. Some sat untouched in rolls, others passed through countless hands, and a few escaped circulation entirely. That unpredictability is part of the magic of coin collecting. You never know which ordinary-looking coin might turn out to be something special. As collectors continue to search through old jars, rolls, and inherited collections, the 1957 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny remains a favorite target. It's accessible, historically rich, and full of potential surprises. Whether it's a high-grade example, a bright red copper beauty, or a rare mint error, this coin keeps drawing attention decade after decade. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look at the date, the color, and the details. That small copper coin might be telling a much bigger story than you expect. And who knows, the humble 1957 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny sitting quietly in your collection could be waiting for its moment to shine, reminding us that history often hides in the smallest places.